Joined now by Wyoming Republican Senator, former and member rather of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator John Barrasso. Senator, we appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Thank you, Jim.
So, first question, again, the administration has not made a final determination here, but there appears to be evidence they are citing of Iranian involvement here. If that is established definitively, do you believe the U.S. should retaliate with military action against Iran?
Well, number one, I spent time this morning going through the entire classified briefing on what happened. I believe Iran was the source of the weapons, the missiles, and the attacks on Saudi Arabia. In terms of an attack, which was your question, as of this point, no. I think we need to continue with the sanctions. They are biting, they are punishing, they're making a difference. I think in terms of Saudi Arabia, they need to be prepared because I believe they were caught completely off guard by this attack, and I think we need to continue to prevent others from buying Iranian oil. I think what they've done with this attack is continue what they've done for a while of trying to interrupt the flow of oil around the world, driving up the prices so they can sell it. They need the money. Iran needs the money because the sanctions have been so damaging and punishing to them.
As you know, the president floated the idea of relaxing those sanctions, giving something of a lifeline, a few $1 billion in relief. Do you believe that is an advisable step at this point to at least pave the way for broader negotiations?
Well, I support the diplomacy effort that the president has made. There was going to be an opportunity next week in New York. But there are a lot of people, Jim, and you know this, you've lived in that part of the world, who benefit from trying to undermine diplomacy. Whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, they don't want to see peace in the area. Whether it's the hardliners in Iran, whether it's those in Iraq who have Iranian leanings. All of those people would lose in a negotiated settlement because part of any settlement between the United States and Iran would mean less resources to those sources of terror. So it looks to me like somebody is trying to blow up any effort of people to work together to find peaceful solutions.
As you know, there was a peaceful solution, whether the president or others liked it or not. There was a nuclear deal signed to by the U.S., America's closest allies. Iran was abiding by that nuclear deal, according to U.S. intelligence assessments. But the president pulled out of it. I wonder if you see, as you have this possible march towards military conflict here, that to some degree this is a crisis of the president's own making.
Oh, I don't believe at all it's a crisis as you described it. I think President Trump was right to pull out of the Iranian nuclear deal. I thought it was a terrible deal for the United States. It didn't stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but specific to what just happened this weekend, that deal did nothing with the strategic weaponry, the missiles that have been fired, the cruise missiles used by Iran, all of that, those levels of armaments were not outlawed or removed by the Iranian deal. What happened this weekend, to me, points to who Iran is fundamentally. They are a terrorist nation. They are a global threat. And we need to have a united world to isolate them, to point that out, to say, look, we don't want to change the regime. We want to change your behavior, and it's time to do it now.
I want to ask you about Saudi Arabia. Of course, they're involved in this. We're coming up on October 2nd on the one-year anniversary of the brutal murder by Saudi agents of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In the wake of that, you supported legislation to reevaluate the relationship with Saudi Arabia because you described that murder as being contrary to American values. And I wonder if you still believe such a reevaluation is necessary.
Well, I believe it is. I voted for that in the Foreign Relations Committee. The murder was brutal, was ruthless. It was done by people that were unforgiving, a dictator who had that ordered, in my opinion. But you asked specifically about American values. And American values are completely opposite of what happened with Khashoggi, completely. But then we look at what are American interests. And I think one of the greatest difficulties in any kind of foreign policy is working with people whose values may not be aligned with yours, but whose interests do align with you. And I think that's the situation that we find ourselves in right now with our relationship with Saudi Arabia. So yes, I support selling arms to Saudi Arabia in their effort against Iran, who I believe as very threatening to the world.
Okay. Speaking of U.S. interests here, the president made quite an interesting statement on Twitter regarding the possibility of retaliation. He said, in effect, and we put the tweet up on screen if we have it, we said, in effect, we're going to ask the Saudis, take advice from the Saudis on under what terms we would proceed going forward. It appears the president there is saying the U.S. should take direction on retaliation from Saudi Arabia. Is he outsourcing a key national security decision here to the Saudis?
No, not at all. I spent plenty of time with the president. Look, he leads. He's a leader through action, results, solutions. He's not going to take direction from any foreign country at all. He didn't run that way, and he doesn't serve that way. So I don't believe that at all. I think he is going to work with Saudi Arabia to see what they may need in terms of to be able to defend themselves against incoming weaponry, which they were, in my opinion, completely unprepared to detect or defend against.
Yeah, it appears it was quite a surprise. Senator John Barrasso, we do appreciate it when you come on our program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good to have him. So ahead for us.